out at 6 in the morning, my dad flipped me out of bed, like literally. I probably would have gone right back to bed pouting if not for the look on my dad's face. Never have I seen my dad truly scared, and I mean, he's a little bit accident prone. Not even when he had a tumor on his back that could have possibly paralyzed him, or when he cut off the tip of his finger into a dish of scalloped potatoes, have I seen the utter fear in his eyes. The last thing he said before sprinting out of my room was, "Something's wrong with your mom." Now, if anyone had heard that at any time in their life, they'd probably be a little bit anxious, but I knew that my dad would not wake me at that ungodly hour on a day off from school without a justified reason. So I sprinted into my parents' room, and the look that my mom gave me was identical to the one that my dad had had on his face, but also filled with deep agony. She was moaning, and not simply because she was in pain, but because she couldn't catch enough breath to scream from her misery. She was sitting up, curled in a ball, clutching her chest and taking short gasps. So your feelings of unease probably mirrored my own at that moment, but it was all I could do to comfort her and hold on to her as my dad rushed around the house, clearing the way for paramedics and firemen so they could access her when they arrived. The whole time my mom and I were leaning up against the edge of the bed, she kept whispering in my ear, "I can't breathe. Let me stop breathing. I can't do it anymore. Let me stop." I had to repeatedly remind her that help was on the way and that someone would be there for her, and I was there for her, but those 6 minutes passed like an eternity. And by the time they filed in, my mom had completely collapsed on me and had fallen to the ground because she had lost feeling in her arms and legs. I couldn't even take a breath as the paramedics started pounding us with questions of her medical history and, "Is she normally this pale?" Even after connecting her to oxygen and loading her onto the gurney, the pressure and tension in the room didn't diminish. My sister and I, we watched the ambulance speed away with our parents that we loved so much, but she had less of an idea what was going to happen than I did. Once the adrenaline rush kind of crashed and subsided, I felt slightly hollow, and I didn't realize how many people had been packed into that room until they had all left, and how empty the house seemed without my parents. Just like that saying, you never know what you have until you lose it. Turns out, you kind of knew what you had, but you never knew the extent of their impact or that you might lose them. I should probably mention that the date was January 21st, the Monday before semester finals. Oh, and not just the day before finals, but my birthday. And not to complain or anything, but it was my 16th birthday. Everybody dreams, every teenager dreams of their 16th birthday. It's sort of the landmark in the progression of our lives and that pivotal time that marks us as the beginning of our adulthood instead of our kid years. It is filled with rainbows and sparkles and new dreams, dreams of added freedoms and privileges that come with age, like a license or a longer leash to roam without the constant supervision of our parents. We are giving wings of independence, and we stop at nothing to see how far they can fly, how fast, and what adventures they can bring us. Yet on my 16th birthday, I received something much more than an iPhone or a computer or an extravagant party. I was given a gift that I can never give back, one that never stops giving, a reality check. Over the course of the next few days, I learned that you actually only do live once. Yet the fragility of that single life is worth much more than any stupid prank or consequence of a stupid action. So I guess you could say you only die once. YOLO. Doesn't quite work. And I know it sounds cliche for me to say to not take your life for granted, but it's true. Too often we get caught up in this, the grass is always greener on the other side, and we don't see what we have right in front of us. If the miraculous team of paramedics, doctors, nurses, surgeons hadn't saved my mom, I don't know what I would have done without her kind, loving support. Growing up in La Cañada means that many of life's dangers are shielded from us by this gigantic invisible bubble, as many of us call it. I always had the mindset that it won't happen to me, or I didn't need to worry because I wasn't out in the real world yet. And I believed in the invincibility fable, I'll admit, that life's risks don't really apply to me because I will never be put in that position or need to cope with serious or tough, dangerous decisions because I'm smart enough to know how to evade them or know how to avoid them. John Green wrote in Looking for Alaska, "When adults say teenagers think they're invisible with that sly, stupid smile on their faces, they don't know how right they are. We need never be hopeless because we can never be irreparably broken. Like all energy, we can only change shapes and sizes and manifestation. We cannot be born and we cannot die." So even John Green sees how the teenage brain functions and how our brain just skips the stupid risks and how we always have an increased drive for sensations. I was so over-focused on how to define myself as an individual and attain independence separate from my parents that I didn't stop to think of the effects of my actions. Poor decisions can cause teenagers and adults harm, and you might escape the serious consequences, but then again, you might not. It's easy to put yourself in a situation that is difficult or impossible to evade when we forget to pause and to reflect on the consequences. However, I realize that it's simply not enough to just not want something bad to happen. So after being rushed to the local emergency room and then to USC where she had emergency surgery that lasted 10 hours, and after spending 2 weeks in the ICU, my mom finally came home to us. Still, the time that dragged on in her absence was what impacted me most. The first time I was allowed to see her was an accomplishment on both our parts. For me, my driver's license test, and for her, the ability to breathe on her own without a tube shoved down her throat. Although she didn't really remember much of the time she spent in the ICU, she was able to voice her concerns about being a vegetable, that she wouldn't be able to take care of herself and not having a reason to live if she was just going to weigh down the family. I can't tell you how many times she looked straight at me with her bloodshot, slightly yellowed eyes from the meds and said, calmly, "I need to go." After inquiring where she needed to go, she replied with, "I need to die." You have no idea how heart-wrenching it is to see the fierce woman who would do nearly anything for your happiness and to see you strive in life nearly give up for a second time. Yet as I sat on the edge of her hospital bed, as the mysterious machines and IV lines whirred around us that were really her only lifeline, she found simple peace in clutching my hand and singing an old song. And in that moment, I knew we were going to get her back, but not without several lessons learned. My dad was constantly by my mom's side in the ICU at USC Medical Center as she recuperated from her aortic aneurysm. And I kind of had to step up to be the mother figure. An aortic aneurysm is a general term used to describe any swelling or ripping of the wall of the aorta in the heart, and it causes severe pain, massive internal damage, and unless treated immediately, death, more often than not. But while I was shoulder deep in load after load of laundry and dishes, I realized the amount of pressure and work put on our parents to help us achieve greatness in life is truly mind-boggling, especially in La Cañada. We risk away all of their hard work with our teenage live-for-today mindset and our indifferent attitude to things going on outside our own head. The choices we make can help and hurt us for the rest of our lives. No matter how safe we think we may feel, always consider the possible outcome, because they are called outcomes for a reason. Medical care is virtually not always effective and can't heal every wound. So beware the decisions you make, no matter how small, for they can shape your future self. Don't mistake me by thinking that I mean for you to all become overcautious and fear the world and like there's going to be a boogeyman around every corner or something. But simply choose the path that leads you to love, laughs, and compassion to one another. And lastly, be kind to yourself. Thank you.